koutou katoa, nau mai hoki mai ki tēnei kaupapa, ko Boni te rongopai tiki waho tōku ingoa, ko te kai arahi o te ora auaha aho. Kia ora everybody, welcome back if you joined us before in our first two episodes of the webinar. And for anyone who this is your first time, welcome. My name is Boni te rongopai Tukiwaho, and I am here to introduce our new friends that will be a part of our third episode for this part of the webinar series, 2021. I'm not going to be a huge part of this kōrero. I'm going to leave it to our friends, Dr. Renee Liang and Lucy Day, and they will give you some perspectives around storytelling and how we can respond to the situation that we all finding ourselves in at the moment. Auntie Rona, kia ora koutou. Hei a tērā tau, see you next year, 2022. Ka kite.
Tēnā koutou katoa, ko Lucy Day tōku ingoa. I'm Lucy Day. I've been a New Zealander for 25 years, but I was born in England. Ko Ōtautahi taku kāinga in INA. I am very proud of being from Ōtautahi and all the things that this wee city has been through over the last 10 years, which have taught me so much through the earthquakes and the horror of the terrorism, and have forged a body of wellbeing work, which I've been really proud to be part of the community working on that. So I work for the Public Health Unit. I'm a health promoter by trade and a public health specialist by role. And at the moment, all our work is around COVID-19, particularly supporting the heroic people in the Auckland Regional Public Health Service who are right at the front of things. My agenda is I'm really interested in how our health system could become more health promoting and pay better honour to the ways in which arts and creativity might broker well-being for individuals and communities. I'm really interested in that. And in my practice, I'm very happy to partake of any arts that are on the go. I love to engage with any kind of art, but my own practice is mostly based around words and particularly poetry.
Đại家好, 我嘅名係梁文慧. So I'm Renee Liang. I'm a Cantonese New Zealander, and I am a paediatrician. So that's one of my interests in this conversation around health, because we spend a lot of time chatting to families about their health. And also with one of my other hats, I am a writer. That's the short version. The longer version is that I started in poetry, got drawn into theatre, and now I'm really, really interested in exploring all the different forms of writing, and especially the ones that will help me with science communication.
Our storytelling, we are storied people. We're born in story and shaped by story, and so the stories are how we set ourselves in the context, and they're amazingly pliable. You know, I'm aware that when people introduce themselves or say their pepeha, they can say different things depending on who they think is there, and then when they find out who's listening, they'll respond and change. We change our stories to make ourselves have things in common or to have differences. And so that's a really fascinating environment in which we live, the environment of words. And so in order to be good storytellers, we also need to be good listeners. You know, if I think about the stories of liberation, which have allowed me to live the life that I currently live, sometimes they, I came out 30 plus years ago into a very different world, a world where it was a much harder story to tell, and you were much less sure about who was listening and how they were listening, and I've lived through a revolution, you know, not there yet, but a revolution in terms of what stories can be honored and listened to, even if people don't necessarily share the experience. And so I'm really interested in the healing power of being able to speak our own truth and have our own truth listened to and listened into existence, because some stories are really hard to tell, to put words around them. And so you asked about responsibility, the responsibility to listen and to clarify and to tentatively offer, you know, did I hear you say this? No, not that. Okay. Oh, this, because I talk my way into existence, and I am listened into existence. And, you know, those great myths that hold us, many different myths, they kind of contradict each other, but who cares? I mean, it's a glorious kaleidoscope of stories that we're held in. And yet when you know that someone has told you something very precious about themselves, then that's a link between you that holds you. And that's where wellness happens, I think.
As a doctor and then as a writer, I have been very interested in stories. In fact, when people ask me, how can I do such different things? I actually remind them of my realization that, in fact, I'm doing the same thing. I am listening to stories, I guess processing them, and then working with the owner of the story to tell it a different way or to tell it anew. So I've always been interested in stories. I love watching for narrative patterns because they're everywhere. And then there's something really cool about spotting that pattern and then using it to connect with other humans. I think that listening to and then receiving a story back of yourself is very therapeutic. In fact, it may be the most therapeutic part of, for example, an encounter with a doctor, having someone listen to your story and then speak it back to you and check if it's true. And that's something that we try to do, even though doctors traditionally haven't had a very good reputation for listening. So when I work on a story together with someone, whether that be a fellow artist or my patient, I see that my listening to their story and helping them with it gives them agency. And I think that's really important to understand. So moving to responsibilities, remember that a story is part of someone, just like their heart or their face is part of them. It belongs to them and to them only. So just like what if you would respect someone's body, you wouldn't talk about a story, try to control someone's story or take someone's story without their permission. We sometimes use words in medicine like respect and confidentiality, but in reality, I think it goes much deeper and wider than that. It is at the heart, understanding that somebody has control over their own story, and that's very important to their health and their sense of self. It also is possible to have more than one story about the same thing. So we're seeing this a lot at the moment in the situation that we're dealing with. And it's really useful to remember that for any one thing, one person's story about it is going to shine brighter for them than everybody else's story about it. And that's something, a bit of knowledge that you can use. Taka taka te ha ki runga, taka taka te